Hello, everyone. Happy it's Thursday. It's June. Happy Pride Month. I'm hoping that everyone, wherever you're reaching and watching this conversation, that you're well and taking good care of yourself today. I welcome you all back. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's collective conversation. If this is your first time joining, welcome. So happy you're here for our repeat guests. Or not guests, but those of you who have participated in some of our previous collective conversations, welcome back and thanks again for joining. My name is Taisha Ty Wilson. I serve as the Director of Engagement here at Philanthropy Together, where we host these monthly live conversations, real conversations, as y'all know. If you know anything about me, these conversations are designed, y'all, collective conversation. This series is designed for us to really bring in some new voices, folks that are doing amazing work in the field of collective giving. Our speakers will shed some light on just communities and the causes that they are advocating for. And so this is just a safe space, y'all. Safe space for you all as audience members to ask questions and to listen and to learn. And what I'm hoping and what we are hoping, my guest speakers today, is to inspire and inform you all about some LGBTQ causes and giving circles that are celebrating and doing great work with pride. So as you all know, as I said, June is Pride Month. It is a time to celebrate, y'all. A time to celebrate and acknowledge all of the efforts that our friends and family and just overall the LGBTQ plus community are doing. I'm an ally, and I'm just happy to center this conversation around those efforts today. It is also a challenging time, y'all. If you are watching the news, unless you are living under a rock, there is some things that is taking place across our nation in terms of legislation that targets transgender people that are within the LGBTQ community. And so, y'all, we got to talk about it. And so I truly, truly believe in my heart, my whole heart, that collective giving and fundraising and our efforts and our advocacy around that can respond to the negative backlash that we are seeing across this nation from a legislation stance. And so we're going to talk about that and so much more. If you don't know, there's about over 500 anti-LGBTQ bills that are up. It's ridiculous. Let me say that again. Over 500 bills, y'all, is taking place. And according to the Human Rights Campaign, this backlash has been so fierce that some organizations, LGBTQ plus organizations, are starting GoFundMe campaigns and fleeing states with anti-trans legislation. And so, y'all, this is a challenge. This is something we need to talk about, and we're going to talk about it today. And so with that being said, we're going to talk about that and solutions and what giving circles and what we can do as allies and advocates to fight back. So I'm super happy and honored to be in community with two amazing philanthropists. Bridget Conway-Taylor, she is the founder of the Black Trans Lives Thrives Giving Circle, and Jim Fielding, who is with the Indiana University's Queer Philanthropy Circle. And so welcome, Bridget. Welcome, Jim. I had a TED Talk at the beginning of this, but I'm so happy. I'm so happy to bring y'all voices in, and we truly are honored to have you joining us for this timely conversation today.
Thanks so much for having us, Taisha. Thank you
Yeah,
to
we're
Philanthropy Together.
honored. Yeah, we're honored to be here.
Of course. So let's jump on in, because I don't want to take up all y'all time. We can talk, which I can, but I'm not. So we're just going to jump into this conversation. Welcome, Jim and Bridget. Bridget, I want to start with you. First, just introduce yourself. But I think a huge portion of this collective conversation series, y'all, is designed to center voices. I want to know your own story. Like, how'd you get involved in philanthropy? Let's start with your story, Bridget. Share a little bit more about you and your circle and just how you got even involved in this movement of collective giving.
Sure thing. So my name is Bridget Conway-Taylor, and I founded the Black Trans Lives Thrive Giving Circle in June 2020. I kind of giggle at the idea of being referred to as a philanthropist, because it's not a word that I've, used for myself, and it's a word that feels like it belongs to like other people. But I know that technically it's true. I'm an Australian who lives in New York City, and in June 2020, I found myself on the West Coast in a really isolated part of the state of Oregon, and it was when the racial justice uprising was really kicking off, and there was a lot of activity happening all over the country, as we all know. And the vast majority of my friends and family in New York City were out in the streets, getting really involved in protesting in the rallies that were happening. And I was watching that and hearing about that from where I was in the middle of nowhere in a really isolated place without a really ideal channel or a suitable channel to sort of like participate in that physically. And at the time, I was also seeing somebody who came from generational wealth, and we were in dialogue about like, what does it mean for us to participate in this moment in time? And for that to be like sustainable participation, like what are we going to do together and individually? And it was the first time in my life that I'd really been close with somebody who was part of a family trust, and where I learned more about what family trusts are. And I was struck by the potential collective power that family trusts can have, the way that people who are in those family trusts can wield that economic power and either benefit from it themselves or collectively, or to wield that for others and to like have an impact on communities that they care about. And so, I was lamenting about the fact that that wasn't really happening with that family trust. And it inspired me to think about like what's an equivalent version of that, because I come from a blue collar working class family in Australia, small town, and I've class elevated myself through my career. And I would say that the vast majority of my social sphere, my like friend network and queer family, are sort of like in that similar economic level at the moment. So I was thinking, what if we do something similar to this family trust and all contribute, some of our resources at a level that's sustainable, but not like this like entry level, like $5 a month for the cost of a cup of coffee. What if we just like pool our funds and sustain the operating costs of organizations that we care about? And because of the particular, like moment in time with that uprising, I was really aware of the fact that black trans voices were not central in that movement, and they were marginalized even in that movement itself. And so it felt like a no-brainer for me to say that like we will be supporting Black trans-led organizations. So that's how the Giving Circle was founded back then. I reached out via text to 10 people and said, hey, I had this idea. Would you want to get involved for $25 a month? I heard about this platform that does, like, you can run it on this platform. Everything is set up for you and it's super easy. You just put your card down and it's done. Let's keep it super low maintenance. And a bunch of people said yes. More than double the amount of people that I asked said yes, because friends of friends got involved. So we launched in late June 2020, and we are now at 325 members and over $118,000 given in 3 years.
Amazing.
It's a great story.
Such a good story. Such a good story. And we saw so many of us mobilizing and organizing and really feeling that call right after George Floyd. So many circles like you and existing circles like the one, my Giving Circle, Heritage Giving Fund, just felt like I had to do something. So I just that your story, your origin story is very important and relatable with so many others who were what we call COVID babies or COVID or whatever, Giving Circles. And so thanks for sharing that. And also, before Jim speaks, Bridget, I think we also even have some newbies to the space that might be unfamiliar with just the definition of a Giving Circle. So we probably need to frame that. You mind sharing what is the Giving Circle?
Yeah, sure. Well, my understanding of the Giving Circle is that it's a group of people who all commit to give a certain amount of money consistently at a certain cadence, depending on like what criteria each Giving Circle has. And they're generally gathering around a geographic interest or a cultural interest or a causes interest or an identity interest. And so there's some kind of like commonality that's bringing them together, something that's calling them to say yes and to stay committed to that Giving Circle. And the Giving Circle itself is an apparatus that essentially gathers the funds and then like disperses it to grantees so that the grantees don't have to do as much fundraising throughout the year. That's certainly the philosophy that we use with Black Trans Lives Thrive. We don't expect our grantees to raise a finger, to lift a finger, and to it's absolutely up to them as to whether or not they want to engage with us. We only are able to, because of the platform that we use, we're only able to grant to organizations who are nonprofits or who are fiscally sponsored by one. But otherwise, it's essentially like if you are a Black trans-led organization, we want you on our list and we would love to support you at some point. So that's, my understanding of Giving Circle is that common interest and sustained year-round giving.
Spot on. That common interest, that calling, that's our shared values. That's that like-mindedness that anchors us together. So thank you for that. Okay, Jim. Well, I would love to, I can't wait for you to share the story of the Queer Philanthropy Circle. Yes, please jump in.
I love Bridget's story. So, it's interesting because the Queer Philanthropy Circle came out of the Indiana University Foundation Board of Directors, really. I'm a member of the Indiana University Foundation Board of Directors. We are the fundraising arm for the university, the public. Yes, we're a public university, but we have an endowment. We have a fundraising arm. And we're actually the third giving circle. The first giving circle that we role modeled a lot off of, to their full credit, is the Women's Philanthropic Leadership Circle that has been around for 12 years. The Black Philanthropy Circle formed in 2018, and we came on board in 2019. And we actually were formed at a foundation board meeting where Quinn Buckner, who is the current chairman of the Board of Trustees, which is the governing body for the university, stood up in a foundation board meeting and said, I love what the women's group is doing. I love what the Black group is doing. I challenge the LGBTQ members in attendance at this board meeting. I would say publicly shamed us, but okay, I'll call it a challenge.
Call to action, Jim.
Yeah, call to action. And said, I would love to see an LGBTQ version of a giving circle. And literally that was like in the morning. And at lunch, those of us that were in that community and allies of that community got together at a table at lunch and said, let's do this. And so very similar to Bridget, and it's completely based on the philosophy of a giving circle. We have an annual membership stipend. We have 3-year terms, basically. And so if you join the Queer Philanthropy Circle, you commit to a 3-year set donation of a certain amount per year. Some people pay in advance, some people pay it annually. And we then take that money, invest it in the endowment. We also raise money in other ways, not just through the membership. But really where it culminates for us is we have an annual grant making process that happens to occur in June. The applications start in December. And the 3 giving circles at Indiana University, the Black, the Queer, and the Women's, have a common application, and people from in the Indiana University ecosystem. We exist to support our communities within the ecosystem. And the definition of that ecosystem is students, alumni, faculty, and staff of any of our campuses. We have 9 campuses within the system. We have the flagship campuses in Bloomington and Indianapolis, Indiana, and then we have the regional campuses throughout the state. And so it's a grant making process. The grants range anywhere from $2,500 to over $25,000 or higher. And there are committees in each of the giving circles, but specifically talking about the Queer Giving Circle. Our committee is called the Advocacy and Community Investment Committee. And we review all the grant applications, ask questions of the grantee, like do all the legwork, and then make a recommendation to the full membership that this is how we should allocate our money for that year. It culminates in an amazing day in June. We just got through it, where the finalists for the grants from all the giving circles are invited to one of the campuses, usually Bloomington or Indianapolis, and they present their grant to the full membership, their grant request, and take questions from the full membership. This year, between the 3 giving circles, we had 30 presentations. All 30 of those people actually got funding from one of the circles. But specifically talking to the Queer Philanthropy Circle, we've been in existence since 2019. We're at north of 50 members right now. We have different levels of membership. But in those 3 years, we've granted over $750,000 already to the IU ecosystem. And those grants, again, they range from $2,500 to have a speaker at the Multicultural Center in Indiana University, Kokomo, to gender affirming care and mental health resources in the Student Health Center, to scholarships for the community, both academic scholarships and emergency scholarships for LGBTQ youth who may be cut off financially when they acknowledge their sexuality and their family may not be fully there for them. So it's exactly, though, what Bridget said, Ty, what you said. It's the coming together of like-minded individuals, people, queer individuals and allies who dedicate their time, talent, and treasure to improve the lives of the queer community at Indiana University. And that definition of improving the lives is changing all the time. And we also see, which I know we're going to get into, not only the grant making piece, and I know Bridget too, it's the advocacy piece. We also feel we have to be a voice for that community. So we are a group of volunteers. We are a group of donors. Again, I don't think any of us say we're a group of philanthropists to Bridget. I think we're a group of people who care and are giving back. And this is our way of giving back.
I love this so much. And we're going to talk right now about the beauty and the power of giving circles. Matter of fact, my boss, we had a team meeting yesterday, and she said, Ty, did she mentioned about the Chronicle of Philanthropy. They just had an article that came out just yesterday, y'all. And the title of the article says, to respond to anti-LGBTQ legislation, fundraisers are turning to giving circles. And so I have to lift that up, because sometimes people think giving circles and it's like, oh, these small, they're cute. These are cute little groups of people coming together. It's like, yeah, we're cute, but we're impactful and powerful. And to your point, Jim, about it's not just the grant making piece, it's that advocacy, it's that beyond the dollar piece. Bridget, you talked about centering and not having so much work be on the grantees, but more on us as funders. So y'all, this is a question. So the movement and the power of giving circles, what do y'all in this focus for more grassroots options that's rooted in community, like from the community, by the community, that for us, by us spirit? Why do you think people are turning to giving circles in terms of just trying to think of other ways to enhance their fundraising strategies and just the overall power? Like, why do you think that this uptick of interest in giving circles is taking place?
I think that if we look at My Giving Circle and we look at the landscape of queer concerns and we think of it as a system, there's no surprise to me, given the number of, as you said, 500 different bills in contention around the US right now. And the vast majority of those bills are affecting transgender people across the US. And so my intuition on this says that, if we aren't asking our grantees for any labor in return or any engagement in return, we're just giving them funding, so that that is done in the hopes that it will alleviate some of the time that they have to spend fundraising throughout the year. If they can, instead of spending their time fundraising, actually get involved in organizing, in base building, in getting into those legislative spaces and raising their voices. Like, if their voices aren't in those rooms because they're out in the streets fundraising, or they're like writing grant applications, there's a problem. So that's the way that I think about it. Like, if organizations like Giving Circles or grassroots donors are able to alleviate some of that fundraising burden and allow these organizations who operate at the margins to go into those rooms and be at those tables, then I think that's possibly a better option for them. Also, I think that, like, just point blank, big philanthropy is donating to organizations that they're close to in proximity to identity. And so, you know, in terms of the Black trans community, big philanthropy isn't necessarily donating to Black trans-led organizations. They rely upon the sort of like the so-called trickle-down economic. It doesn't work. Trickle-down economics is a lie. It's not a thing that exists. So, you know, like Black trans-led organizations, point blank, aren't in the firing line of big philanthropy. And so it makes
Right.
sense to me in terms of why giving circles work for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think in, you know, through our existence, I think first off, just calling ourselves the Queer Philanthropy Circle, right? I mean, and owning that we're queer and walking around branding ourselves at that and our letterhead and we have pins and all that is, I think just our existence is advocacy and our existence is education and in a form of mentorship in a way too, because let's face it, most of the members of our circle are older because they have the means to be in the circle. And to your point, Bridget, they're of a certain class, they have the means to participate. But the community that we're giving to usually it is not at that same level and has, you know, real needs for very valid reasons. But I also think there's this whole virtuous cycle to it because I think the people who are in these groups that are getting the grants now will be part of the Queer Philanthropy Circle 10, 15, 20 years from now. I think there's this virtuous cycle of they will remember that there was this group of people who cared about them and took the time to learn about their organization or their particular needs and believed in what they were doing and funded them. And I think there's this whole pay it forward. I mentioned it earlier, and not necessarily pay it back, but like truly pay it forward that I see happening. And I can see it already in some of our new members that are coming in, where we're actually getting younger members and members who have not historically been donors to Indiana University. In full transparency, this is the first time they've really participated in anything in that. And it's because they appreciate the micro focus of the community. It's not, to your point, Bridget, it's not just donating unrestricted funds to some nameless foundation. It's literally donating to something that is near and dear to their heart. And I think one of the things we stress a lot in the QPC, and I'm sure you guys do too, is that tangibility. So as a donor, you can actually touch and see and feel where your money is going. And the other thing I love about giving circles, and Ty, I know you guys have a ton of information on this, is as an individual donor, I could never give to 10 or 15 organizations a year because I can't spread my money that far. But because of my participation in the giving circle, we're able to fund 10 or 15 people by coming together with my peers and my friends and my allies. And so I can feel my impact farther. And I think that collective giving is just phenomenal. And that's where the grants day for us, and believe me, the first 2 times we did the grants day, they were virtual because of the pandemic, right? It's interesting that both Bridget's circle and our circle basically formed in the pandemic. This year was the first year we did in-person grant presentations. And, you know, our note to ourselves for next year was make sure we have more tissues because it gets super emotional, right?
It does. It so
super
does.
emotional. And you have people in the audience who might not even be part of your circle who are coming up and saying, I want to learn more about your circle. Or in some cases, I want to make a donation to your circle. I don't want to be a member, but I love what you're doing. So I'm going to donate some money to your circle. I don't have time to serve on committees or, you know, be in the circle, but I love what you're doing. So I'm going to write a check for that. And that tangibility is so important to us.
Yeah, the redistribution there of income that you get from some other realm that you can just like put into the circle at a nominal amount. It doesn't hurt you, but it has a huge impact on the community that you're serving.
The multiplier effect is huge.
Yeah. I also want to just, before we continue here, I'm also in close proximity to another organization, another giving circle called the Red Canary Song Giving Circle. And that's actually a giving circle that directly supports a nonprofit based out of New York City called Red Canary Song. I'm friends with the directors, and I know that they have to do a lot of grant writing. So the barriers to entry for traditional funding for traditional grants are enormous. If you are not a professional grant writer or a professional fundraiser, if you are a grassroots organization coming together, you need to either learn those skills or you need to find somebody in community who's willing to either do it as a volunteer or for a nominal fee. So I think that like part of their diversification of their own funding strategy is to have started their own giving circle so that people who were in community with them could like just sign up and subscribe to become consistent funders throughout the year. And they had set themselves a goal that would see all of their basic monthly costs met, as well as provide budget for them to do programming and to fund initiatives within the community that they're serving. So I think that that's something that's interesting to regard as well. The barrier to entry to receive traditional grants is pretty high, and generally above the heads of most people who are coming together for grassroots organizing.
It's a great point.
Such a great point, y'all. Viewers, I hope y'all are really listening in to what we're talking about in terms of the power, the transformational difference of a giving circle in regards to like what Bridget is talking about. These barriers that we have heard from our nonprofit organizations as it relates to them having access and getting the funding that they need to build their capacity. Giving circles are low barriers for that. A lot of us lean into the principles of trust-based philanthropy. One of those, Bridget, you talked about, of like not putting the work on a grantee. That's work to have to fill out an 8-10 page grant application. And so we're disrupting that institutional way of how he does it by reducing the barriers. Matter of fact, not just reducing them, explicitly making sure that we don't have them by simplifying our grant applications, providing beyond the dollar support, helping our members to not only pool their resources, their financial resources together, but to learn deeply together about these causes and issues. And that alone that's impact right there, of just systemic impact in terms of the way that we're doing granting, the way that we're cultivating donors, Jim, to your point, that relationship building and bringing those voices into the decision. So y'all, it's so much more than a money. And I'm so glad, Jim, that you lifted up the fun of part of a giving circle, because I feel you. When we give out our grants, there's nothing, I get chills. I have chills on my, right now, because it's like, this is changing. This is a game changer for these organizations that feel seen and feel like they are part of, supported wholly from donors, which is very different than institutional philanthropy of like, here, take the money and gone on, and we don't have, there's
I think that's such a good point, because Bridget touched on that too. I think because these giving circles by nature, we're trying to cut out the bureaucracy. We're trying to disrupt.
Right.
We actually have a nimbleness and a flexibility to us and a sense of urgency. I mean, I think the fact that Bridget formed in 2020, we formed in 2019, and then we're already grant making already, right? Yeah. And I think we formed, Bridget formed for a very specific reason. We formed for a very specific reason in reaction to what was happening in the world. But we were just able to cut through a lot of that bureaucracy and just get it done, to get the money and the support into the system, right? And it didn't take us 18 months of like writing bylaws and getting this approval and that approval and everything else. It was basically, let's make a very simple, clear mission vision statement, and let's go out and start talking to like-minded individuals and raise the money, and let's just get it out there and start to see that multiplier effect. And I think that's the other thing I like about the size of these groups. Of course we want to grow our group. Of course we want more members, because then that would give us more capacity to do more grants. Right. But at the same time, I think it is that community feeling of, let's come together and do this. And it's kind of like, come on, kids, let's put on a show, right? We're just doing it. And we're kind of, if we make mistakes, which we have, we're more begging for forgiveness instead of asking for permission, if that makes sense. Like we're kind of just going because we're trying to fail forward. And I don't think we've made a lot of mistakes, but are there things we could do better? Sure. And do we try to improve all the time? Sure. But we're doing it in a collaborative, open community way, which is what I love.
that rapid response, the ability to start fast, literally happened to us. When we formed, I had just been part of a coalition of organizers staging a rally that was gathering for the sex worker rights movement during June 2020. And I had worked with a couple of speakers from SWAP Bronx, the sex worker outreach project in the Bronx. And it was literally the summer of 2020. Sex workers were left out of the government stimulus programs. So, like, quite frankly, like if you were involved in sex work, you were not eligible to receive government funding. And so I knew that that was the case. I knew these organizers of the SWAP Bronx chapter. And so they were our first grantee. I made a plea, not a plea, but I lobbied the Giving Circle members to say, like, I'm in community with these folks. I know what's going on here in New York City. I know what organizing work they're doing right now. I've just been in like a project with them. I would advocate that we support them as our first grantee. And we did. Similarly, we had a cycle. We do quarterly cycles with each grantee. So we had a cycle with the House of Tulip in New Orleans. And so we supported them in, I think, 2020. And then when Hurricane Ida hit, I was able to, again, make a plea to our members to say, like, instead of voting on a new grantee to support right now, I would like us to, like, revisit our relationship with the House of Tulip and dedicate this quarter's funds to them. And so we went through another quarterly cycle with the same grantee. And that is the kind of flexibility and agility that, again, is only possible with a Giving Circle.
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
don't think that that agility is possible with a lot of other big funding organizations or where there's a lot of regulation
not.
and whatnot
It's
to
not.
adhere to.
No,
I
I
agree.
agree.
You know, y'all, this is there's so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity to continue, and we're doing it today to share this movement, to share about our programs, our impact, to pat ourselves on the back, to really tell these compelling stories about our grantee partners, to bring more people in. And that's even the on-ramp. We talk about Giving Circles. It really, we're on-ramps for continued civic engagement. This is a democratic this is part of us showing up and utilizing our citizen power and being involved in democracy, right? So it goes deeper than that. I can stay here on just that alone of our impact, but I really want to get into this data next because, you know, they can say a lot of things, but sometimes the data paints a true story. And I want to talk about that for a little bit. So there was a new LGBTQ, as y'all know, so Jim is with the Indiana's school, university's Queer Philanthropy Circle. And so out of the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, there was this report recently that showed that philanthropic support for LGBTQ plus organizations accounted for only 0.13%. I say that again, 0.13%, y'all, of total U.S. contributions. So all money, all charitable money, only 0.13% goes to LGBTQ serving organizations. And now that's dreadful news. I mean, in terms of, because it's just a small piece, and Giving Circles are working to bridge that gap. But there is good news. In that same report, they did mention and how there has been an increase in philanthropic support for organizations that are serving those communities from the individuals. Now, so we still have a lot of opportunity in terms of increasing the total amount, but there was an increase. There was a small increase in individuals who are now considering LGBTQ plus organizations as part of, you know, the organization they serve. And so I want to pull that out and allow y'all to, like, what do y'all feel? How do y'all feel about this data and about that report and just this renewed, what it feels like folks is paying attention and they're saying, okay, well, let me actually.
Well, yeah.
Like, so what do y'all
think?
I mean,
it's what Bridget said, right? I think earlier is, I think the reality about LGBTQ plus fundraising, let's just call it that, right? Or donation, is our community is very, very diverse and very, very broad. And there's these micro communities underneath with very specific needs. I think what Bridget has done with Black trans lives, right, is a very, like, And I see this even in our own giving circles. We're talking about queer at Indiana University. That's actually very broad because the community has very different needs based on age, uh, sexual identity and gender, race, income, socioeconomic issues. And so I think the awareness is high, and I think this constant barrage of attack of legislation that we're under is helping us raise money. I'm finding in our own case, not only is it helping in our own community, it's helping with allies. I think we're doing a lot of ally fundraising now because people are saying this just isn't fair. This just isn't right. But I think the reality for any fundraising organization, but particularly for our community, the needs are far outstripping the available resources. And so I think there is a sense of urgency and pressure on us to figure out how to do even more, because I think in many cases it's going to be these types of circles and private solutions that's going to help us get over the top.
Yeah, I also agree with Jim. If one can name a silver lining with this legislative nightmare that we're in, it's that it is also raising awareness for these causes and concerns and the trans community specifically. So I think, to that point, one of the reasons why people are getting in the ring and getting involved in fundraising is to try to respond to that, because the day-to-day citizen isn't in Washington, D.C. They aren't in the legislative houses. They aren't on the floor speaking necessarily. So I think this is one way to sort of just say, like, from home, please take my money, and like, let's see if we can do something to like
use it. Use it for good. Use it for good.
I do want to call though the first stat that you mentioned, that 0.13% of giving is directed toward LGBTQ organizations. There was another, I was present for a virtual event this week. There was an organization called Funders for LGBTQ Issues, and they released their own 2021 tracking report just this week. And there were two really striking stats that came out of that put a little bit of context around the stat that you just mentioned there, Taisha. I'm going to quote here. The first one is that foundations allocated less than 4 cents per $100 of their total giving in the US to trans communities and issues. So out of $100, 4 cents goes to trans organizations and communities. And the second stat that I want to pull out here is funding to Black LGBTQ communities has decreased in terms of dollars and as a share of overall LGBTQ funding. So while we might have seen an slight increase in the overall funding landscape, organizations that are Black and queer are experiencing a decrease. And so it's not good times. It's not it's not that it's good times for anyone, because the funding overall needs to be higher as well. But the impact is going to be different on different communities, and where the results are up and to the left and trending well in terms of an increase in funding overall, the decrease for organizations that are Black and queer led is concerning. And the fact that only 4 cents of $100 is going to trans-led organizations, generally speaking, it's terrifying. And so I think putting some context around these stats is really important.
It's terrifying.
It's
it's inequitable and it's unjust. And I think this is where, okay, Ty, I'm going to go there. I mean, I think this is where we, as giving circles, getting to the advocacy part of us, we have to watch what's happening in legislation on all marginalized communities, on all underrepresented communities, because we're all in this together. And I think, in our own queer community, I'm holding our big national fundraising organizations accountable, because when Roe versus Wade got overturned, we were told that they were coming after the gay community. We were told they were coming after the queer community. I mean, by a sitting Supreme Court justice. And we all should have been outraged about what was happening to women's rights, because the reality is about our communities. Women's rights, people of color rights, Black rights, Latin rights, trans rights, gay rights, it's all human rights, it's all civil rights. And basically you have a system and a patriarchy that is fighting back against all the marginalized communities. And if we don't collectively call out issues when we see it happen in the Black community and in the women's community, even if it has, quote, nothing to do. Like, it bothers me when my own community says, well, that's not really our issue. And I'm like, I beg to differ with you. It's all of our issues.
That's
If a woman's right to choose is being taken away, it has huge ripple effects on queer rights. If Black lives are under attack, forget about trans lives for a minute, which we can never forget about, just
right.
simple Black lives issues, that is going to have a trickle effect on the Black trans community. And I think if we don't collectively talk about this, and again, use our voice and use our platforms to say that is wrong, then we're doing a disservice to our own community, because we are not in isolation here. And there is a systemic campaign to demonize marginalized communities and to weaponize marginalized communities. And if we don't say that, and if we don't use our time, talent, and treasure again to fight for all of these causes, we are doing a disservice to our own community.
Ooh, Jam, you are speaking so much on that intersectionality. We were talking about that in our prep call, that intersectionality. And so all of these, you're so right. All of these, because I mean, this is just a stat, that's a stat just for LGBTQ plus led serving organizations. But we see those stats in organizations serving women and girls. That's why mine explicitly and only supports organizations that serve women and girls. We see that show up in Black serving organizations, that all of these marginalized organizations that are led by BIPOC, that are BIPOC-led organizations, they have on average smaller budgets, their financial measures, their revenue, expenditure, like all of it. And so it's going to take us to think very big like that of one another in terms of how we can bridge something that will help all of us. So I love so much that you pulled that out and really brought that truth to power, because that's actual factuals. We are in this together, y'all. This is not a siloed issue. This is a collective issue and a blatant attack on people of color in our community, in the communities that they serve. Bridget, I feel like you were about to say something too.
I mean, it's sort of just speaking to the some of the stuff that I was talking about before, and some of the ways in which like big philanthropy is somewhat ignorant of their power. I was musing on this as I was going through sort of our prep session and thinking about this conversation today. And I genuinely do not think that big philanthropy, traditional big dollar philanthropic organizations realize how misspent their gifts are when given to organizations that are focused on the concerns of groups that are sort of in the most privileged and powerful parts of the LGBTQIA ecosystem. That support, that's the size of those gifts, would make a profound, literal life and death impact on organizations that are operating at the margins. And that funding is not getting to those organizations right now. There's, one too many, it's not one too many. We all know that there are a disproportionate number of gender-based murders in the Black trans community, particularly of Black trans women. And we do not see that happening within the gay male community to the same degree. It's just not happening. We do not see that happening in the lesbian community. We do not see that happening in mainstream communities in the LGBTQIA ecosystem. And so that's sort of something that I'm really present with. The fact that, folks can operate at that level and have family trusts and participate in big galas and raise funds and whatnot. But unless that money is getting to the most marginalized in the LGBTQIA communities, what's the point?
That's right. And Bridget, I also think that we're not even talking about just the emotional toll of the day-to-day work that these, in addition to them fighting for the funding and trying to get institutional philanthropy to acknowledge that piece.
Right.
What about the emotional toll of the day-to-day work of LGBT, these marginalized, these organizations that are I think about that. I think about that piece of these leaders who are, trying to fight for funding, but then also still doing the work, the actual emotional pooling, what you're talking about, lives these are people's lives. And so do y'all feel that there is also enough like understanding and acknowledgement from the philanthropic community on just that piece of like the emotional toll of the
Absolutely
way
not.
that we
No,
work?
absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. It's
I mean, I figured the
think
answer, but we needed to
I
put this on
think
recording.
I think until people work in the space, to Bridget's point, there's absolutely a fundamental not understanding of that. Like that there's not the emotional toll, the physical toll. I was thinking about the other thing, you know, when Bridget was talking, Ty, when you were talking, like, you know, this whole a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? Is I think the other thing that's so hard in our community right now and fundraising in our community is, and Bridget, you know this, it's we're getting attacked at all levels of government. It's not all at federal, right? It's state, it's local, it's city councils, it's school boards. And that is where you get into the physical, just that emotional toll of, oh my gosh, now I need to go to school board meetings. I need to go to city council meetings. Now I need to lobby my state legislature. I need to lobby my mayor. And it's not just what's happening nationally, right? And in a weird way, the larger groups and that can afford lobbyists and be in Washington, they're kind of at that national level. But where we're really getting attacked is more at a local level right now, at the community level. And that's where we need the resources. And that's where $250 or $500 can make a huge difference in a city or in a town or in a center. And I think we have to get the conversation focused on that, because it's the same thing, like these micro circles, it's almost like micro donating, right? It's like micro, I don't want to even call it, it's not micro lending, but that concept of micro lending, people know from the banking world, but it's micro donations, it's micro support, because we need these groups to be at a school board meeting who is considering banning books or outlining something like that. Advocacy is as important as rallying the president and the vice president and Congress, because that's really where we're getting attacked. That's where these numbers, these 528, these numbers of anti-LGBT legislation, it's not all at the national level, it's local.
Yeah.
And I think we're not prepared for that as a community. I'll just say it. We were not prepared for these multiple attacks that we were getting at all these different levels.
I think that's super important to emphasize. If anyone watching has ever been an organizer, has ever been involved in grassroots organizing or nonprofit organizing or fundraising in any respect, it's exhausting. It's thankless.
Yes.
It's never ending. It's unsustainable. And so if you are operating in a grassroots organization and you are serving constituents in a marginalized community, you are running on fumes most of the time.
Fumes.
And those communities are those who are most in jeopardy in our world, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our cities. And so if you are just constantly operating on fumes, how the hell are you supposed to show up for those who are, like, who need the most resourcing and the most protections and the most sort of like legislative bargaining power in those houses of government? I'm thinking about, I'm going to share something about my past life in Australia. The last job that I had in Australia was for a digital advertising agency. And my client specifically was the Australian Defence Force. And within the Defence Force, there are different arms of the Defence Force. There's the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and then there's some sort of small things. My client specifically was the Australian Navy. And of those three different arms, they had the largest budget consistently by far every year, because they had the biggest barriers to recruiting. They found it the most difficult to recruit because the Navy is the least sexy one of those three services in Australia. And so, they needed to staff every single one of those services. And I think about that all the time. The entity that had the most trouble recruiting, they flooded it with money. We got to do really cool projects all the time because there was always big budgets available to help this the Navy that struggled to recruit people. And so I'm thinking about that when I'm thinking about organizations who find it the most difficult to fundraise and find it the most difficult to get legislative support and find it the most difficult to get access to resources. Like, why is the funding so like reversed Why is the majority of funding going to those, the sort of like who are most resourced, or who are most powerful, or who have the most privilege? It's mind numbing.
Yeah, all this is Bridget, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I'm thinking so much about, I know we have about 10 minutes left, and this was so rich that we talked about the advocacy piece, because I think for a lot of giving circles, we didn't start off with it that way. We really were thinking about just how we're going to shift more money to these organizations that bomb amazing work in our community that need us. But if this is our call to action, to not to consider advocacy, because these policy and these attacks on our rights, our human rights, is really real. And I truly believe that, Bridget, as you were talking about, like, just we're talking about the work and the day-to-day toll that it has on these leaders. I attended the Peak grant making conference a few months ago, and they had this vision board, and it was asking us, like, all these different things that we would like to see. And one of the suggestions I made was that funders need to fund rest. They need to fund sabbaticals. Like, philanthropy has the opportunity to think and do so much, like to think real big about the ways that we care for our communities. And so I'm just dropping that as just a lift up.
No, I love that.
Action for ways and how we can also think about how we can support these leaders. Fund sabbaticals, fund rest.
Resting, resetting, and also game planning, strategizing. So if you are just running on fumes all of the time, and you're just like, just constantly hitting the end of your giving budget, or whatever it is that you might have as a resource to give community, if you don't have the time and space and resources to like have a retreat and game plan and think as a collective, like, what are you doing this coming year to serve your constituents? Like, what's your long-term strategy? How are you like actually like moving the community towards a better vision of the future? Like, if you don't have time to do that, like, how does anything change? It's just sort of like a resourcing system, rather than a sort of an entity that's helping community shift. So I'm thinking about that as well, in terms of like having the time, space, and resources to think long term.
Well, I think it's very much like investing, to both of your points, investing in the mental and physical health of the organizations.
Yeah.
It's a little bit, I was thinking when you're talking, Ty, it's like when you get on the airplane and they say, if that thing drops down from the ceiling, put your mask on first before you help others. Is if our community, if our leaders in the philanthropic community are tired and broken and burn out and their batteries are run out, the communities we serve are going to suffer. And I think the other point where Bridget was going is, you have to talk about sustainability of, like, where is the next generation of leader coming from? Because that's where I think, honestly, even in the queer philanthropy circle, one thing we haven't talked about is we have these 3-year terms, but we also have term limits, right? That you can now it's 12 years. That sounds like a long time, but so it's 4 terms, but we're not the Supreme Court, right? We're not appointed for life. And I think part of our job, like, I'm in my 2nd term now. We've only been around for 1 term, but I'm thinking about, okay, 7 years from now, who's going to be the version of me, and where am I identifying? Because I think that's what we have to do. We have to replace ourselves, right? And it doesn't mean that I might still not participate financially if I have the means, but it means that the work I'm doing, because I'm chairman of the circle, that's the work that I'm doing. Someone has to pick that up, right? Someone has to pick that up. And if we don't allow these smaller organizations to think like that, because of course you always meet those people that have been doing it for 20 years and 30 years, and you're like, oh my gosh, how are they doing it? They are rare. They are the unicorns. The bigger reality is the burnout and the turnover. And if you really believe in the cause you're supporting, we should be giving them that mental rest, that the sabbatical, but also in, where Bridget was going, I mean, I hate to make it sound business, but like some strategic planning, right? And some org planning of, we want you to be around 5 years from now. How do we do that? Right? Because right now they're just running on fumes, keeping the lights on, right? Keeping the wheels on the cart. But if we want this to be sustainable, we need to help them with that.
This is so good. Ileana, she's my producer, our producer behind the scenes. I will go over 5 minutes because I want us to end on hope and I don't want to rush hope as we close out. So, Jim, you have a book coming out. Congratulations in
Thank
advance, right? You got a
Thank
book
you.
coming out next month. It's called
Yeah.
All Pride, No Ego. And we're talking so much about, advocacy and just all the
Mhm.
things. And so I'm wondering, tell us, share a little bit about your book and
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
hope
It's
for and what you hope to accomplish in terms of just
Thank
advocacy
you.
for LGBT.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think when I wrote the book, um, this whole sense of urgency and timing, I didn't really realize I was going to be releasing the book in this world that it's in right now. I mean, I know it was rough, but it's definitely gotten rougher since I started. And so, to your point, it's called All Pride, No Ego: A Queer Executive's Journey to Living and Leading Authentically. It comes out August 15th, and it's leadership philosophy and leadership lessons formed from my life as a queer executive and a queer man, operating in some of the world's largest media and retail companies. And the book is organized around 10 leadership lessons, which are then backed up with personal and professional stories or anecdotes about how I got to that leadership lesson. And what I've realized as I was writing the book, and now that I'm out, getting the book, it's in pre-sale and, starting to publicize and setting up the book tour and all that kind of stuff, is it's really not about the book anymore. It's more about the platform and the community and the discussion it's going to start, because it's really a book about authentic leadership and creating safe work environments and safe environments for queer uh, employees to bring their authenticity to work and to bring the best of themselves into the work environment, and how we as leaders, gay, straight, allied, LGBTQ leaders, all kinds of leaders, need to create safe work environments, just like we talk about creating safe schools with Glisten, or safe communities for our Black trans community. It's about safety, it's about security, and it's about authenticity. And there's still many, many people in the work world in the United States and around the world that are not able to live their authenticity, that are not able, where it could be uh, not necessarily life threatening, in some countries, life threatening, but just using the United States, it could be job threatening. They could lose their economic security, they could lose their job because they work in an environment that is not welcoming of other. And so I'm just excited. Thank you for letting me talk about Ty. I'm just excited to get it out in the world, to start that conversation, and to continue to elevate these other conversations we're having.
Of course, I'm excited to read it. As we talk about the next generation leaders, I think your book is so timely, Jim. And I hope that it is extremely successful and really,
Thank you.
lands where it's supposed to land in people's hearts. So, Bridget, Pride Month, it obviously is a time for us to fundraise, to advocate around LGBTQ plus causes and organizations. But I just want to lift up that y'all just kind of like, Black Philanthropy Month is in August and such. These are months, but the need is year round.
Absolutely.
The need is year around, y'all. So it's very important for us to we celebrate, and it's all the momentum in a month, but for us to sustain that momentum and that advocacy all year long. And so Give Out Day is a month-long fundraising campaign, and it is the only national giving event for the LGBTQ plus community. And so I want to end on dropping you earlier. You shared a few organizations that you love. So, but share with the people 2 organizations that they need to consider supporting. Yeah, share 2
Absolutely.
organizations.
So we have grantees. We've supported so far 11 grantees in the 3 years that we've been in existence. We've just celebrated our 3rd birthday. Our grantees have been all over the country. We have grantees in Alabama, Arkansas, Texas. We have grantees that are focused on specific identity groups or specific concerns like housing or food or medical expenses. The 2 organizations that I'd like to highlight are those from my sort of hometown community. Our current grantee is Black Trans Nation. It was founded and is led by T.S. Candy, who's a phenomenal organizer in New York City. It's founded by and for Black trans sex workers, and T.S. Candy is just a force in the local community. They're in like all manner of like advocacy programs, legislative houses, conversations with elected officials, etc., etc. T.S. Candy is just really phenomenal as an organizer in New York City. So I would like to call out Black Trans Nation specifically for donations. We are currently raising 12 grand for them in Q2. There's 1 day left in Q2 and we are almost there. So we're hoping to close the gap of $1,000 today and tomorrow for Black Trans Nation. So if anyone is interested in joining the Black Trans Live Giving Circle, if you join and donate today or tomorrow, it will go to Black Trans Nation. The other organization that I'd like to call out is For the Girls. They're a phenomenal entity in New York City. They've been around for years now, and they are a powerhouse of bringing funding together and redistributing that funding for medical costs and gender affirming surgeries. They host a series of like parties. They have merch. They are really excellent. I think For the Girls is also run by a Virgo. That might explain why they're so good at organizing. But they do a lot of programming in New York City and they distribute all over the country. So I would say that For the Girls is another organization that I want to call out. I know they have a campaign going right now where they're trying to raise 250K and they are currently just over 50K. So if you want to get behind two organizations, For the Girls and Black Trans Nation. I also just wanted to mention, as one of the birthday programs that we launched this week, it was a call to our members actually to get involved in professional philanthropy. And what I mean when I say that is to add Black Trans Lives Thrive Giving Circle to your LinkedIn as one of the entries in your experience section. If you're able to do that, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this later, if you're able to add Black Trans Lives Thrive Giving Circle to your LinkedIn experience, it will promote the Giving Circle to your professional network, to a bunch of people who get paid. And it will help raise awareness for the Giving Circle to a completely new community that we haven't really tapped into yet. So that's the call that I have for our members and new members. It's to get involved with that professional philanthropy on LinkedIn.
Perfect. That's good. And what about you, Jim? Two organizations. Who you calling out?
Yeah, I mean, my two. I love that. Bridget had, amazing local examples. My two are national, but they're two very focused on very specific needs within our community. And the first one is the Trevor Project, which is really about suicide prevention. And I think that the mental health crisis, particularly among middle school and high school kids, of all the colors of our rainbow, is extremely high. And I think I admire the work that the Trevor Project does, specifically focused on peer-to-peer mentoring and counseling with professionals and suicide prevention. And then the other one that I've been really spending quite a bit of time with and I'm getting excited about is the Point Foundation, which again is very focused on LGBTQ scholarships and mentorship, and raising and recognizing people with urgent needs, but also people with academic and leadership excellence. And I think it really fits as I was thinking, because I knew this question was coming. I just think it fits with our conversation because I think that's the next generation of leaders. I think the people that come out of receiving a scholarship from the Point Foundation are hopefully the people that you have on a talk like this, Ty, in 10 years or 15 years. And I just feel that like bringing, raising and amplifying, it wasn't a world where I was able to come out when I was a teenager, even though I knew my truth. And so I'm perpetually excited and stimulated by these kids who are 13, 14, 15 years old, 18 years old, living their truths and trying to make a difference in the world. And I think if we can elevate and amplify them, we'll do great things for our community.
Perfect. For the Girls, Black Trans Nation, Trevor Project, and the Point Foundation. Did I get those right?
Yep.
All right, y'all. Okay, well, this was such a great conversation. Y'all bring us home on hope. I like to center on that. So what is your hope for the future of LGBTQ plus collective giving community? What's your hope for us?
My intention is to lower the barriers to entry, to just make it seem like a no-brainer for everyone to get involved. Whether it's $1, $100, $1,000, whatever it is within your monthly budget, depending on your economic situation, it's entirely possible to get behind an organization that's doing work with a community that you care about. So it's my hope that more and more people learn that it's like super easy to get in the ring. And that's the sort of spirit and energy that I bring to recruiting with Black Trans Lives Thrive.
I love that. I think mine is, it's just a simple mantra that I've had for a long time, and that is, may we leave our corner of the world better than we found it. I think my approach to giving, and I think it very much fits with Bridget, is money, time, talent, treasure, testimony. Just give back and think about any small thing you can do to make a situation or an organization or a community better tomorrow than it is today. And I think sometimes the needs of our community and this legislation and everything is so overwhelming that we forget that small things really do make a difference. And it's like just simple random acts of kindness that can make somebody feel seen and heard is super important right now.
Y'all are special. Thank you so much. I mean it in the greatest and most respectful way. Not like you're
Thank
special.
you.
Y'all are just the work that you all are doing is fantastic, and people need to pay attention. And I'm so grateful to be in community and have this very rich and conversation today. So how can people find y'all, stay connected, all the things?
Firstly, Taisha, thank you so much for hosting this conversation. I know that you and I have spoken a couple of times over the years since I formed this Giving Circle, and it's been really wonderful to be in an ongoing community with you as well, and to support the awareness work that you're doing to bring more people into Giving Circles. If people want to get involved or learn more about Black Trans Lives Thrive, they can search for us by just typing in Black Trans Lives Thrive across any platform. Our primary social media channel is Instagram, so that's our handle over there. And if you want to find us, blacktranslivesthrive.org, that's our website, and you can click through to the Giving Circle from there and see all of the different grantees that we've supported, all of the dollar amounts that have gone out the door to those grantees, and where we are in our current giving cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for us, I think the easiest place to find us is diversity.iu.edu. That is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department of Indiana University. We're listed on there. The Career Philanthropy Circle can be found there. And I think all of the diversity initiatives on the Indiana campuses can be found there. I think that's the easiest way to stay in touch with us.
Awesome. Well, y'all, join us for the next conversation. I really do hope that you walked away learning something and feeling inspired. We talked about so many amazing things, real things that are happening in real life in our lives. And so we need more. We need to band together, y'all. That's the only way forward. And so I hope that you all will support Jim and Bridget in their work. And just get involved. Get involved. There's giving circles all across the world, y'all, and collective giving groups that are doing some amazing things right in your backyard. And consider Philanthropy Together as a source. We are field catalysts. Our whole mission is to democratize and continue to diversify philanthropy through the power of collective giving. And so we're here for you. Jump into our website. I facilitate a monthly training to help you start a giving circle if you want to do that. If you want to join a giving circle, you have 2 amazing circles to consider and to advocate for, as well as there's others on our global giving circle directory, which is on our website, and so much more that are there. But I hope y'all would just get engaged. So stay engaged, be social. Y'all continue to give boldly. And Jim and Bridget, flowers to y'all today and every day.
Thank you.
Every day
Thank
for the
you.
work that you are doing. So
Total pleasure. Total pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was great to chat.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, y'all. We'll see you
Bye.
next month for the next conversation. Take good care of yourself.